we want to focus primarily on one player in particular who was the star of your market value update text, and that's, of course, Hayden Hackney, the Middlesbrough defence midfielder, deep line playmaker, holding midfielder, whatever you want to call him. He saw his market value increase to 32 million euros. Ben, he's broken quite a lot of records and stats here. He's the most valuable player in the Championship, but he's also now the most valuable player to ever play in the English Championship. A lot of people listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube or Spotify probably don't pay a lot of attention to the Championship. Can't remember the last time they watched Middlesbrough in the Premier League. But in England, this guy's certainly making waves, isn't he? So why don't you maybe explain to people why his market value's got up to 32 million euros, why he's now the most valuable player ever in the Championship, and why people should be keeping an eye on him this summer?
Yeah, Hayden Hackney's a future star. He'll be a Premier League midfielder. I mean, unless serious injuries happen or anything like that, he's going to have a very good Premier League career. Interestingly, since the last update in March, Hackney actually hasn't played a lot of football. He played about 4 or 5 games, then got injured. But what has happened in that time frame is, 1, he's won the Championship Player of the Season. 2, Middlesbrough have completely fallen apart without him. I mean, we've spoken in the past about, it's come up, players sometimes become more valuable when they're not playing, and this has certainly been a case of that, because you've seen when Hackney's come out of that team, Middlesbrough have fallen apart. They were, at one point, probably just before he got injured, they looked to shoe in for automatic promotion, really. They completely fell off. They ended up finishing in the playoffs, which they obviously lost the semi-final and the final in quite remarkably after Southampton Spygate. But Hackney, unfortunately, he could only play a small role on the off the bench in the final because of the injury. But even when he came on, you could tell instantly he's levels apart. And he will move on this summer. If Middlesbrough's gone up and got promoted, they might have been able to hold on to him, but he's definitely going to be Premier League bound, and there is numerous clubs interested. At the moment, Man United are really in it as well, with Michael Carrick, who managed him at Middlesbrough, a big admirer. Everton, Tottenham have also been heavily linked. He was actually really close to going to Ipswich last summer, and the deal fell through, and that was going to be for around 25 million euros. But that price would have gone up now, and I would be surprised if he goes for less than 32 million euros, to be honest, this summer, which is also one of the key reasons why he has gone up even further. But yeah, I have no doubt that Hayden Hackney will play for a Premier League club next season, and he's been fantastic in the Championship this term. He's also been a regular for a lot of the England youth groups at last summer's Euros for the, I think it was under 21s. He was a key player and a starter. And we've known for a while it's going to be a matter of time until he does go to the Premier League. And yeah, I'd imagine this summer now he will make that move, because there's no way Boro will be able to hold on to him now without getting promoted.
Yeah, heartbreakingly, he's opted to play for England instead of Scotland, despite playing a few games at youth level for Scotland. We could have certainly used him. He could have actually probably been called up to the Scotland squad for the World Cup, considering Darren Fletcher's son's already been sped run to that first team under Steve Clarke. But back to the Championship and back to Hackney. I'm just looking at a list of the most viable transfers of players who've left the Championship or left Championship clubs to move to, well, almost certainly all Premier League clubs. Now, it's a wee bit convoluted because a lot of these clubs got promoted and then players moved, or clubs that got relegated and then moved. But, you know, some household names there for Premier League fans. Romeo Lavia, 62 million euros. Gino Rutter, 47 million euros. James Maddison, 46 million euros. Nathan Ake, Mateus Fernandes, Harvey Barnes, Archie Gray, Tyler Diblin, guys like that. And like I said, a lot of those players maybe technically still Premier League, getting relegated or about to get promoted. What kind of fee do you think we're talking about this summer for Hackney? Because you mentioned the clubs that have been linked to him. You know, there are your Brightons and your Nottingham Forest who certainly know how to throw money around. But as you mentioned, there's even bigger clubs like Manchester United involved there, aren't there?
Yeah, and for the actual list of the most valuable players in the Championship that he tops, we have excluded those players that got relegated. For example, Romeo Lavia didn't play in the league, got relegated with Southampton, and then he moved on when we technically had him in that. But yeah, I think well, obviously our aim at Transfermarkt is to get it close to what the fee is going to be in the summer, because we're trying to react to the market. But of course, also teams will overpay and underpay for players. So we have to get what we think their value is on a fair market. And I would imagine that it would be around 32 million euros. I guess a slight concern for clubs might be that injury he's had, but it's the only really serious injury he's had in his career so far. So I wouldn't have thought that would have put teams off too much. We've spoken a lot about the English tax in the past as well. So I think he fits into that category. Yeah, I would imagine it would be around 32 million, maybe slightly north of that, depending on how good Middlesbrough are at negotiating. Obviously, having not been promoted, they do lose a little bit of their negotiating power, because Hackney is going to probably force a move if he's not allowed to. But I'm sure Middlesbrough fully expect him to move on this summer. And yeah, I would imagine it would be somewhere in the early 30 million euro marks.
Yeah, very, very interesting player to keep an eye on. And I've got no doubt that we'll hear all about him this summer in the summer transfer window.